Okay, so I just got finished watching the Ronald Reagan Evil Empire speech. I have to admit, I thought it was very good. I loved it. I found myself clapping and nodding my head and smiling to pretty much everything he was saying. It was a very good speech. The the source, the website describes it as one of the best proprietors or the endorsers of Christianity, and I really agree. It's very obvious that President Reagan he really cares about the country. He seems to care about God. I don't know if he's a Christian or not, only God knows that. But it is very obvious that he is a promoter of Christianity, and it's nice to see a somewhat recent political figurehead promoting these Christian values. So it was very nice. And now to answer the questions, I actually wrote them down in my notebook here. So we'll jump right in by first asking, what is the speech's topic? So now, going into this, I actually thought it was about an evil empire. He, I think, says evil empire maybe once or twice in the speech, but that's not the topic. The topic really is about Christianity in America. It seems very obvious that that is the topic just from watching the speech. And then what is the speech's thesis or main point? Well, the thesis I think, is very clearly stated around the 12-minute mark. He says, freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. That is very obviously the speech's main point, the driving force, and he states it a couple times, I do believe. So that is obviously the thesis. And then what in this speech suggests that the speaker had analyzed the audience and adapted the speech to its needs. Well, very obviously, he's giving this to a Christian organization. The organization even states themselves in the very beginning, clearly saying they are a Christian organization, they're promoting the gospel and all that. So I think he's familiar with this group, and obviously he says we a lot. He basically almost puts words into their mouth saying you guys are you guys would be disappointed with this, etc. So it's very clear that he is familiar with this group, and he does in fact know what they would like, and he does basically say that in the speech. Now, did the speaker use effective and relevant material to support the speech's thesis? So yes, I would agree he does point to a lot of issues in our culture, such as parents needing to be notified for issues with their children, prayer being brought back to the school. He also talks about abortion, and ultimately he talks about how communism is basically the byproduct of rejecting God's rule. And then, of course, was the speech effectively organized? So for this one, I was a bit confused when watching the speech at first, because it didn't seem like he was actually organizing it into main points. It more seemed like he was just kind of giving a long talk about certain issues. But then he did, in the very end, he did notify, in fact, saying that he was going on to his next point. So what I think he was really talking about was more a 3-point sort of speech where he basically discussed about parents need to be notified about issues, school prayer, abortion, and then finally about how communism is the byproduct of rejecting God. I think that is ultimately the pattern that he did use. However, he wasn't super clear about when his transitions were, so that was a little bit confusing at times. And then, did the speaker use clear, interesting, and accurate language? I would say yes. He was concise when he needed to be, but he used interesting language. He used humor several times, and I do think he's obviously a very good speaker from what he did. And he wasn't using any big or super lofty language that people wouldn't understand either. And then, was the quality of the speaker's voice acceptable? I would say yes. Again, he had a very composed tone. He wasn't shouting or screaming or anything like that. He did raise his voice when he needed to, when he was basically talking about something important, but ultimately it was a very composed and dignified speech. And then finally, were the speaker's movements and gestures meaningful and effective? Well, honestly, he didn't really use any huge hand gestures, not from what I remember or saw looking back. It just more looked like he was kind of just stationed there. Occasionally, he would nod to the audience or smile or laugh, and I think that was ultimately the gist of his movements. So I do think that was effective in that manner, and it did give him sort of like a very almost fatherly look, like it definitely does seem that he cares for the country, and I do think that his movements were effective. But again, I did actually really enjoy this speech. It was a little longer than I expected, but it wasn't bad, and it was definitely interesting. So I did enjoy it, and I hope you guys found this video useful. So thank you for your time.